Alright, so we've got round 3, I think it is. We've got Reti4 versus RZT4097. We're playing on Avora, which is the first time we've been seeing this within the 1v1 tournament and in round 1 to date. We're just waiting to load in. Just note that RZT is going to be called Laservortex in stream, but I'll refer to him as RZT. So 6k on each side, and we're just waiting to go. Alright, so this is Avora. We have 3 capture points, point C and point A equal distance apart but on opposing planes, and point B captured in the middle. A fair amount of terrain to move around through, and so it's going to allow for a lot of things. Beam destroyers, missile waypoints, they're really going to do well here. Maybe not so much railguns. We can see that RZT is starting to deploy a little bit below the galactic plane, sort of 3 different points at the moment. They're all individual ships. We can tell because it doesn't say plus escorts. Likewise, we've got Reti4 now coming in. He's got at least 1 formation here plus an individual ship. I'd expect to see maybe a battleship from either side. I haven't seen either of these players. 2 escorts over there, so it looks like he's very much going for point C, not really move anyone positioning to go over to point A at the moment, although with the limits of deployment we may see the error move to point A and Sweden trays move to point C. Likewise over here, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships. We're just waiting for Reti4 to deploy. Otherwise, we have RZT with all his ships currently deployed. So he's got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So coming really above and below the galactic plane, very much in the center for Reti4, and sort of clustered below for RZT. So here we can see Beam Destroyer being one of the first ships into the battle. Let's have a look at the blue team first. So we're looking at RZT. He's got a light cruiser, 250mm guns, and a torpedo, or what I would assume is a torpedo, but could be a MLS2 with the roll-offs for thunderheads. He's got a rail JDee with some pinards for triangulation. So this is maybe a bare hull, just looking at getting those railguns out as opposed to trying anything else. In the middle, he's got 1, 2, 3 beam destroyers. Great map for this fleet. Point defense on top and bottom, and blanket jammers. Blanket jammers are basically carbon copies of the first one, 3 of the same. Another light cruiser down the bottom, the same as before, either torpedoes or roll-offs for thunderheads, hurricanes, etc. for those smaller classes of missiles, and the 250 mils. And off to the side, another rail JDee, very sparsely fitted out, at least on the outside, but maybe not so much on the inside. So very much a 2 fleets over the same here, being the exact same. Same over here. I wouldn't be surprised to see them supporting each other, and we've got beams in the center. So that is his opening moves for RZT moving into point C. Really going for that one, whilst the rest of his ships start to turn around. He's also making a rush for point D. Sorry, there's 4 points on this map, not 3. Delta is down below. Is there anything up top? No. So let's check out Reti4's. He's got, let's start with the heavy cruiser, a staple that we're starting to see at the moment, but a rail heavy cruiser with 2 Mark 81s and a Mark 82. Then supported by what looks to be a E-War frigate, a bullseye, pinard for spotting and triangulation with some missiles. HMS Knowledge down here being a carbon copy, so again for spotting and missile fire. another rail heavy cruiser down the bottom with a spyglass corvette. Again, you can tell because it doesn't have anything on the outside. And then rounding that off is 3 more. He's gone for a Task Force Ash, one of the starting fleets, which is 3 beam destroyers centered around an E-Wall supporting corvette, which has a Hurricane and 2 blanket jammers. Here, however, unlike RZT, he's got the 250 mils, some chaff, some missiles, and a blanket jammer as well. So very much putting out a fair amount of offense. He's also got a bullseye on one of them and 2 of them, so you should have a fair amount of locking capabilities. Now, RZT's moving forward, capturing point C and point D fairly quickly. So these light cruisers moving in, hoping to capture, or are capturing, 2 points really quickly. And then if they are able to get out before Reti4 comes in and starts to provide any other effects onto him, and it looks like he's starting to burn away. So he's got point C, he's got point D, he's got points on the board coming nice and early. So now he can sit back and engage with the 250s and the railguns as anything makes its way to attack his fleet. Beam destroyers moving in using the asteroids in the middle as a good set of cover. Both teams have pinards, so they should be able to start to meet each other. But the railguns here, unless they have the line of sight through the various holes in the train, it's going to be a little bit hard for them to maintain or get that good arcs of fire. However, with the amount of spotting and with the bullseyes attached to both the frigates and the destroyers, as well as down below, you know, he should be okay. HMS Reliable's getting the first shots off of the game down onto the fast magma, expecting them to see and charge for another round any second. Fast magmas looks like its heading has been set. It's just now burning away back behind terrain cover with its main thrusters. On the nose, its main nose thrusters, I should say. So good opening moves by RZT. So both light cruisers now back within cover, although they do have the core of Amy now does have line of sight onto HMS Knowledge, but it doesn't look like it's going to take advantage, just in getting back behind cover, getting out of those railgun arcs of fire, so, and also moving towards point B by the looks of it. So it's really going for that commanding lead. HMS Sincerity moving up high so it can fire down into point B. There you can see it's got arcs onto the fast magma. It just needs to come to bear and bring its turrets online, and whilst that occurs, HMS Reliable is actually diving down below the map, so it's going to be able to cover through point D. If we have a look on the tactical map, it'll be able to see through point D and then up through point B almost. There you go. So both railgun heavy cruisers are going to be able to draw beads of fire onto the core of Amy. So there you can see railgun heavy cruiser number 1 and railgun heavy cruiser number 2. It looks like HMS Sincerity has found a target and is rotating. The beam destroyer fleet is moving around to the left-hand side of the map to capture point A, where it looks like they will eventually force an engagement with the other beam destroyer fleet. Fast Magma's covering itself fairly well. And has captured point B. So 3-0 at the moment. RZT's captured off to a very good start. He just needs to hold on to these points, and then they'll easily be able to capture this, carry on with this map. HMS Curiosity moving up and above, trying to get some top-down vision. So there needs to be a push to capture some of these points now from Reti. Railgun's still not engaging yet. Just looking for targets. Just because we can see things, remember, it doesn't mean that the players can see. So they've got to have that vision, and then they have to have that, if they can, get a lock on it. Not necessary, but certainly helps improve the accuracy of the railgun shots. They can do without, however. So it looks like Sweat and Trace, and I would say Error, are also going to start to see HMAS Sloop. They look like they are rotating to Bear.
The enemy is securing Zone Atlas.
And these fast light cruisers are really getting into position and capturing point A. So it's a 4-0 lead at the moment. Looks like Sweat and Trace isn't going for the sloop. Beam destroyers moving down and around a little bit slowly, but they are moving. You can see with the history tracks where they're going. The beams in the middle just sitting behind cover. They don't need to commit yet. The light cruisers are doing all the capture. Curiosity is coming over to see point A, and you can just see a little bit of magma down there. That Pinard would definitely be picking some tracks up now. Likely the fast magma is being seen by the Curiosity and vice versa.
Enemy secured Zone Atlas.
Looks like the sloop is now going to make some progress towards point D. HMAS Knowledgeable could come up to point C. It's undefended at the moment. There's nothing on that side. The light cruiser Core of Amy, however, is drifting across. It may see, I would say it sees HMAS Knowledge, just waiting for its guns to bear. However, it's all doing that whilst in the cover of these asteroids. However, Sincerity now should be able to get a fix onto the Core of Amy. Question is, can they turn and fire before it gets behind cover again? So Thunderhead's now being launched from the beam destroyers. Aurora's coming out, beams hitting some of the asteroids. Some of the Thunderheads are hitting. Ripostes being fired for the counter mace launch. These maces won't get too far, so it's safe to say that the other light cruiser also has a torpedo. However, these beams and the 250s now just hammering the top of the fast magma as it gets stuck behind this asteroid. Additional Thunderheads being launched from all the missile destroyers. It doesn't look like it has any other point defense. Smashing into the top, that's dead. RZT, the fast magma, has lost his light cruiser, opening the way for this beam destroyer to move into and capture point A, as we see HMAS Sloop moving into and up above through to point D. So this is where this game can start to turn. RZT was using a lot of those light cruisers as those fast maneuverable ships in order to capture points, and he's just lost one. Still is a 300 points ahead, almost a 330, as point D starts to get captured. So 1/3 of the way to the victory condition, and just over 30 minutes remaining. So he is in a bit of a leading position. It just depends now, can Reti4 come back and win? The fast magma is destroyed, the beams don't need to keep hitting it. Recognizing that this is dead, the life pods are now ejecting is important. Usually there is a bit of space oil that kicks out. There you can see it right here. A bit of space oil, hard to see against the background of the asteroid, but otherwise that is now classified as dead. And ceasefire should be called on those ships and they should be pushing into point A with all haste. The RZT error is moving forward. It may be able to start to draw a bead onto this beam destroyer fleet of Reti4, but still to be determined. It doesn't look like it has any innate locking capability, so it will require someone else. HMAS Sloop has captured point D, and it looks like Knowledge is moving up. If we follow that track, it just looks like he's actually turning away. He's not actually going into point C. The core of Amy, however, is just sitting behind some of the rocks and getting some shots down now onto HMAS Sloop. Those 250mm HE will do significant damage if they collide, and you can see getting some top-down shots, at least two being hit, one through the power and one through the center where you'd see the magazine and the berthing. It's trying to get under the cover of the terrain, however it's now burning. It should just keep moving forward, get under that cover. A railgun shot from one of the railgun destroyers now just going straight through the front center, and we've got a fuel reactor leak. Look at that. That should explode. There's no DC on this ship. And that's it. It is destroyed. It is dead. Space oil has been triggered. However, it is still taking railgun shots. It will be only a moment before this explodes. You can see it has been marked as destroyed. Beam destroyers now coming in, moving towards capture point A. So 1 point down, but 400 points to blue. RZT, Sweat and Trace, looking to fire, also was the one that was firing on Sloop. Error looks like it's moving in order to support Sweat and Trace. I wouldn't be surprised if they start firing soon. Both of these ships may not know that the Sloop is dead. However, once again, life pods have been ejected, space oil has been seen, and you can see that fuel reactor leaks still going. Beam destroyers from RZT now just readjusting their position. They've moved from the back around over here and have positioned themselves more over towards point C. Point D has been captured, but it is going now back to Blue's control, with the core of Amy drifting lazily into point D, taking that capture point out. A little bit too close though. Looks worse than it is. He's a bit of a distance away, but if and when this explodes, it's going to capture or hit a bit of the core of Amy as well. HMS Reliable still not being able to fire, neither is HMS Sincerity. Well, I may stand corrected. Looks like he should easily be able to get some top-down shots onto these beam destroyers, but we've got the railgun destroyers off to the left-hand side here. So this is a perfect top-down shot if he can get it. Punching straight through the top of these destroyers would be beneficial at this point in time. Over halfway to RZT, capturing 3 points to 1, over 500 points. Sincerity now gets its first shot off. First round misses, but we've got a shot straight through the top. So that's going to start to damage these beam destroyers. This is where you want to start to hit them out of range before they can turn and get effects back onto the HMS Sincerity. Whereas if we have a look for the other railgun heavy cruiser, it may be able to see something. No, it won't be able to see anything. However, it is now looks like it's positioning to make a run on point D. Sweat and Trace and Error. The railgun JDee's not firing on any of the beam ships at the moment. Beam ships look like that they are still just sitting where they are. Whether they move into capture point B or move down to D or just hold A is yet to be seen. But Blue still has that commanding lead. The core of Amy and the 3 beam destroyers now grouping up, using the train to get out of the line of sight of HMAS Sincerity, which has re-rolled itself back over and is no longer engaging that target. However, it does have a top-down shot of the core of Amy if it can one see it. So we'll just see if that occurs, and it starts to roll now, looking for that arc of fire down below. Looks like the railguns are missing there, but it now has the beam destroyers getting their 250s firing down onto the top of the core of Amy, who tries to elevate its guns, but it's facing the wrong direction. It needs to start to roll, but I think in this point, there we go, it's starting to roll to re-engage. It has taken a little bit of damage, but not too much. You can see all guns are still working. It's lost its rear MLS3. It looks some of its point defense is gone. It is taking now fire from the HMAS Sincerity and the 250mm HE from the beams. Beams now firing a salvo of Thunderheads each from their VLS complements on either side. So with all the point defense being taken out, they should be able to get some good engagements, but it actually looks like it's not going towards the core of Amy, which I would have thought it was. It's actually going for RZT Error. So this rail JDee actually doesn't have any point defense or blanket jamming. So this salvo is actually going to probably kill that ship. Beams being continually fired now, starting to get some of them down onto the RZT core of Amy. So the 250s, the beams there, we've got the railgun support from the top, and here come the first missiles, but chaff coming out. We didn't see that on the ship before, just wondering where that VLS is. It's just at the front, so the Thunderheads are missing. The first salvo has missed. It looks like the second salvo is actually now going down towards the core of Amy, so it's a really good dodge there by RZT, popping the chaff and setting the heading, and then moving laterally, getting out of that. You can just see how effective that was. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's about 24 missiles that it just dodged. So really good there. Railguns getting the first shots. First shot missing. However, the second shot missing as well. The core of Amy taking significant damage with the extra Thunderheads and the beams. Beams now being able to redirect their attention into RZT Error and Sweat and Trace, or being able to continue down into point D. So they have options here. There is the beam fleet still from RZT, still safe and unharried. It does have some of its weapons destroyed, and no missiles on this one though, and no chaff by the looks of it. Let's just check all these again. So really relying on all the Auroras and the point defense there. Reti4 still only has 1 point, able to move into capture point B now, but unless they start to take all of the points, they're not going to be able to really come back with from a 600 point deficit at the moment. The HMAS Reliable and the HMAS Sincerity, both major point costs, haven't really been able to get the arcs of fire on this map, just based on the windows within the terrain that they're able to see. They are in the positions that they want to be. They're just not being able to get those lines of fire. 250s from the beams and the rails from the Sincerity coming down to hit Error. It's a good top-down shot from the railguns. The pinard on the top's being destroyed, and just continually putting the railguns and 250s in. It looks like the beam ships are going to rotate around. It looks like one of the beams here on the Hawkstorm has been destroyed. The Ridden is still good, as is the Wrath. and the core of Amy has gone nuclear, exploding. And it looks like the Error and Sweet and Trace are going to try and get out of that location. D now being captured by HMAS Reliable. As it does so, it'll be able to see these beams coming now down and around. Sorry, not coming down around, stationary. So being caught flat-footed, the HMAS Reliable is going to be able to see this whole fleet. Points B and D being captured. Beam fleets now are starting to respond. The Reliable needs to get in some shots before it starts to get hit by these beams, because this battle will favour the beams as opposed to the rails, especially with Sweet and Trace now firing. This will be a distraction for what is the main threat. That threat being these ships. Looks like a grouping of the railguns at the front. You can see they're reacting, with the rear one not firing as it does start to rotate into position.
20 minutes remain.
So now a 3-to-1 capture lead. If they can capture C, then Reti4 is going to be able to have a chance to come back here. Thunderhead's being launched from the beam fleet at the enemy beam fleet. Aurora's taking care of a lot of those missiles. This will now be a beam-on-beam engagement. Each of these beams should be rotating to try and engage separately as opposed to remaining in formation, because whoever gets the first beam shots off are going to be the victors here. So first beam coming out from the HMAS Wrath onto the Gate of Birdie. Second one, they're going to focus fire down each of these. You can see some of the beams slipping off as they rotate, but the 250s here doing a little bit more damage than you would expect, because the beams here from the Rash of Pain only have their primary weapon. They don't have any ancillary weapons with the HE, which is going to cause the additional damage to the front of each of these ships. Beams, beam on beam here, two beams focusing down this first one, hitting that frontal mount. Frontal mount looks like it's destroyed. It's puffing a little bit of smoke. Same here, it looks like that one's out of commission. So this is a third and final one, the Nell L. Pierce. Maybe the last remaining ship here for Blue, but Blue looks like they are going back to capture point D, with Sweat and Trace being the railgun ship, moving in, taking a position right next to HMAS Reliable, who, whilst is super close, is not in the capture point potentially. No, that they need to get into that capture point to contest it, otherwise the blue team is going to convert this point back, and then it'll be a 2v2. Still 600 points down, however, it looks like at this point, until that ship gets in, Sweat and Trace is going to have the win here. On the beam engagement, it looks like the Nell L. Pierce is moving out. However, the Gate of Birdie looks like it has repaired its original beam. You can see no smoke still going. It looks like the Rash of Pain, or the Rash Pain, is still out of action. Hawkstorm and the rest of the formation moving, just dropping south a little bit while continuing to engage with the HE. It's now a 2v2, so Orange had a bit of that lead. They needed to keep that point D, but they're now also losing point B. Point B being uncontested as Orange moves out of the way. Need to drive one of their ships in there to halt that progress. And it looks like the beams on ship 1, ship 2 and potentially even ship 3 are destroyed. There is no further movement, so now that these ships here can just clean up. Point C being captured now by HMAS Knowledge. They've been largely left uncontested. Point A also uncontested. C at the moment is now, D at the moment looks like it is now back under Blue's hands. HMAS Reliable wasn't able to get in there quick enough. However, we see Orange now moving into contest Point B, destroying the Rash of Pain and continuing to clean up the rest of these beam destroyers. Point B now coming back under Orange's control. We can tell that these other ships here have no offensive weapons, as you need to have some sort of offensive capability to contest a point. However, you don't need a offensive capability to capture a point that is uncontested. Railgun destroyers, or the railgun JDees coming down shooting up from below as another beam is being repaired on the gate of 30. A little bit late, they need to switch fire from the Rash of Pain, which has been destroyed. Again, you can see the space oil showing that it is dead. This is now the threat with a beam that is fully functioning. You can see the Thunderheads now being launched from the HMAS Curiosity, which hasn't done much this game yet, but holding it in reserve, destroying that ship. So that's 2 gone. Thunderheads now just need to take out the Neil Il Pierce. So 3-1 again. However, as long as Point D still maintains its ship, Orange is not going to be able to come back unless they quickly stop capturing that, unless that point, the Sweden Trace, is destroyed and is therefore captured. You can see the internal fires here on this Corvette. Looks absolutely beautiful internally. As it looks like the beam destroyer is just firing into the flanks, and it looks like HMAS Reliable is not firing at the moment. I wonder if they have enough power. They should do. They may just be recycling their guns. If they can get a couple missiles down here onto Sweat and Trace, they may be able to put it out of its misery. Riposte being fired down onto RZT Error, forcing out some of the chaff, but none of the missiles. Beams now reorientating to target the RZT Error. If the HMAS Curiosity can drive down and put some rounds onto the Neil L. Pierce, that's going to be... sorry, not the Neil L. Pierce, Sweat and Trace. That'll be that. This game, whilst looking a little bit unachievable for Reti4, could actually make a comeback. It just needs to be able to capture Point D. That's the only thing they need to do, and the reason they may not be firing is Sweat and Trace may be way too close, just being able to pivot around the back. It looks like that frontal weapon has been destroyed. You can see the smoke there as it now takes a few shots from the railgun, and Point D starts to go capture. So unless RZT can repair that ship and that frontal mount, it won't have any points left in order to consist as offensive capability, and therefore it is going to be able to start to capture back Point D. This is a bit of a massive turn of events because it's going to have Orange capturing all 4 points and halting the progress of Blue just short of 900. The Neil L. Pierce still has power, doesn't have that red glow. However, it doesn't look like it has any other offensive weapons. It doesn't look like it's repairing. The Hawk Storm likewise seems to be in the same boat, just destroyed or sitting there capturing a point. The Reliable still functioning. However, Sweat and Trace now putting a bit of distance through as Orange takes all 4 points, with 100 points left for Blue to capture and a lot of points from Orange to make up, but the game is still available as the railguns now have the arcs of fire opening up on the RZT Sweat and Trace. The chaff being popped here in response to a riposte coming in, so not an offensive weapon, but again forcing out that chaff. Exploding harmlessly. It looks like HMAS Wrath and the beam destroyers are now going to come down and support the Reliable by taking out Sweat and Trace. And this is a massive comeback from Orange. They've lost a few ships, but have been able to maintain their presence in all areas of the battle, and are actually now quickly catching up. So with the Nearly Pierce with no offensive capability, and RZT Sweat and Trace probably with only a few restores, if this ship goes down, I would say that this game is then over. HMAS Reliable is going to be a lot stronger to take out now. It's probably got a lot more restores, a lot thicker armor. But its railgun is back online, so we know that it still has some restores left. It'd be good to see the Curiosity come down, dropping some missiles into Sweat and Trace, and they now see that actually, as we see that Sweat and Trace is backing away through the gaps within the asteroids. It's a perfect opportunity now to launch some missiles if he has any. Otherwise, he's just going to be holding in place. Likewise, HMAS Knowledge. If it has any missiles left, this is a perfect time, waypointing them, hitting him in the rear. Life pods making their way off the map. That's a great feature that was implemented a couple patches ago. Really declutters this battle space, but provides a little bit more cinematic experience as they try to get away. There's the Sweat and Trace. Can Knowledge drop some missiles now? Its VLS 16 is facing the correct direction, but we now have the beams being fired from the beam destroyers pursuing this railgun. And HMAS Reliable is now able to actually move out and away from point D as Sweat and Trace moves behind the asteroids. So it's going to try and open up getting some railgun shots from this position here as it starts to move across the screen. As it pops out from behind this asteroid here, it'll be able to get some shots onto the Sweat and Trace, being a flanking shot. $500 points now being capped for orange, still 100 for blue, but doesn't look like any other way that they can capture those points. The now Pierce is still destroyed. And it looks like the beam destroyer formation will start to move underneath. Will start to move underneath this asteroid here, and you can see that their heading looks like they've already been set, ready for that engagement to pop out when they pop around the asteroid. As the Reliable starts to continues to move, looks like it's actually stopped, to be honest, but it should be continuing to move either down or around so that it opens up that arc of fire for its railguns. This is the only thing left that is stopping orange from completing the game. However, they also don't have any time pressures because they've got the commanding presence on this battlefield. This is their battle to lose. However, I would strongly say that this is orange's to win here. They don't have much ships that could really lose to a single one, but at all you just need to capture 1 point in order to force some of these ships out and away. If Sweat and Trace was to capture 1 point, it would be hard for some of these ships to then capture, destroy, and then contest that point. Don't forget, we also have a time limit here, so we still have 8 minutes to go. But we still have 8 minutes to go and 400 points left to capture for orange. HMAS Knowledgeable's here, it's rotating around, however it doesn't look like it's got any other offensive capability as opposed to this missile. It'll be interesting to see in the post-game summary when it ran out, because it could definitely be firing some missiles now. It needs to sit in point C, which it is doing, so it can continue to contest this point, as Sweat and Trace shouldn't be able to contest, noting that its main railguns are destroyed. We do now see the Reliable, it looks like it's given up, it's just going to stay still over here. It's going to leave the beam destroyers to finish off this game as they come down and around looking for those final arcs. And here you can see the 250 mil from the HMAS Ridden finding the Sweat and Trace just visually, but missing with its cannon. We've got the HMAS Christina with all its electronic warfare and jamming, not providing just that support, but otherwise not providing any of the additional firepower. So the Ridden looks like it's moving into position now. It looks like Wrath is coming down and below heading set, looking for Sweat and Trace. And Sweat and Trace has just disappeared right over the top of that asteroid. There's a really good positioning there from RZT, especially in this type of battle. But the railgun shots now from the Sincerity coming down through the top, hitting Sweat and Trace in the final moments. The Sincerity taking that top commanding position of the entire map. Hasn't fired or done a lot of damage, however it now has the opportunity to finish off Sweat and Trace, closing out this match for Reti4. However, again, still only 5 minutes left, 300 points to go. If there were any missiles, now would be the time to use it. Otherwise, these beams are going to take a while to move around. So unless the Sincerity can complete and destroy this, it'll still go down to the wire. Still catching up though. Getting looks like 8 points per tick. So
5 minutes remain.
Orange throwing out some of the little bit of banter here with the damage control. 5 minutes left. If this ship stays alive for 5 minutes, then we will be able to, we'll see that blue will actually survive. That's it. RZT Sweat and Trace has been taken out, remaining with the Nell L. Pierce being the only ship remaining now on the field of battle. HMS Sincerity pulling its weight at the very end, taking out Sweat and Trace. The damage control teams just not being able to keep up with the amount of firepower put down onto this ship. We've still got a 140 point difference. 4 minutes left. Railguns continuing to go unless the Neo L Trace now is destroyed. And it looks like HMS Reliable is in a position to be able to provide that fire. Potentially should have been firing this whole time. We'll actually just see whether or not these points will be able to tick over in the next couple of minutes to determine whether Orange can pull back or can achieve one of the most astounding comebacks in this game that I have ever seen. There we go, hitting just over 800 points. Let's just have a look at the battlefield. And that's it. Laservortex has surrendered. RZT has called it there. Orange with an amazing comeback there. Honestly, I did not initially think that they were going to be able to pull that off. In the final minutes, we had seen that they would have ticked over, as seen by Can Be Fair. This was an amazing battle. Hats off to both of them. That was really well played. Great fleet compositions, great positioning. And it really shows that that a little bit of additional patience can come off and never to give up. So let's have a look through a Laservortex. The light cruisers here being absolutely destroyed in that explosion. We've got the beam or the railgun destroyers here providing, these were the beam destroyers in this fleet here, getting a little bit of damage but not a lot because they got jumped on by Reti4. And then the RZT, the Fast Magma, and the other light cruiser not doing a huge amount of damage but providing those early capture points. The Rash of Pain here also putting a few rounds downrange. HMAS Christina survived, so did the Curiosity. These beams did very well. You can see that Hawkstorm lost that front spinal mount at the throughout the battle, but was otherwise fine. HMAS Knowledge lost it at all offensive capability at 2615. So in those dying moments when we were saying, look, do they have any missiles? Can they fire any missiles? Look, it had nothing. It also didn't have, didn't really do any damage, but that's fine. It did what it needed to do. It would have dumped its missiles at one of the other targets and being countered. The Reliable, not a lot of damage, but taking out that final Destroyer was absolutely what forced the GG in this game. And then we had the Beam Destroyers here, so the Ridden and the Wrath doing huge amounts of damage. Reliable was the one who was dealing down on point D, and then Sincerity not doing as much damage, but finishing it off, and then Sloop capturing those points. So yeah, ultimately a great game, really well done to Reti4. That was a great comeback, one of the best comebacks that I have seen in a long time, or if ever. So let's hope that we continue to see these types of matches going forward, and take care, and we'll see you for the next game.